The smallest coupe that Mercedes-Benz makes could also arguably be said to be the best, at least from the point of view of an enthusiastic driver. This C-Class coupe targets coupe versions of BMW's 3 Series and Audi's A5 more effectively than the three-pointed star has ever managed to do before. Now, it's been a long while since Mercedes-Benz could field a credible challenger to the cars that dominate the British executive coupe sector, two-door versions of BMW's 3 Series and Audi's A5. In fact, efforts from the Stuttgart brand in this respect have been surprisingly muddled. In recent years, after all, they bought us first CLK, then E-Class coupe models that were rather pricey for many buyers, which wasn't ideal, given that the only other alternative for customers of the three-pointed star was a C-Class sports coupe model that, though attractive and well priced, wasn't really in the same dynamic league as its German rivals, and was allowed to live on long beyond its sell-by date, badged as the Mercedes CLC. In fact, it wasn't until the spring of 2011 and the launch of this C-Class coupe that Mercedes at last had a completely credible contender in this category. Unlike the old C-Class sports coupe, it's pricier rather than cheaper than the saloon variant upon which it's based. But it does come with a degree of both actual and perceived sportiness that car lacked. A standard AMG body kit takes care of the visual dynamics, while lowered suspension, speed-sensitive steering and active damping all aim to account for a road-going response to surprise BMW and Audi buyers. Here then is the most affordable entry point to a world of Mercedes-Benz coupe motoring, revealed here in arguably its sportiest form. Let's try it. Somewhere in the Mercedes-Benz lineup, there's a coupe for just about everyone. But aside from the SLS supercar with its lottery winner's price tag, there isn't much for the enthusiastic driver. The luxury CL Class and four-door CLS Class models are, after all, aimed at more laid-back owners. And even the folding metal roof SL and SLK Roadsters don't really prioritise super sharp handling as some of their rivals do. All of which means that there's undeniably a place in the Stuttgart brand's model range for a mainstream coupe that will please younger or older, more red-blooded folk. In 457 brake horsepower C63 AMG form, this C-Class coupe offers exactly that, taking the fight to BMW's M3 in a form that will shock the Munich mark. When it comes to the more mainstream C-Class coupe variants that most customers would actually buy though, cars like this C220 CDI model that I'm driving here, the story of course is slightly different, but even so, this car can be an addictively rewarding thing to drive, and far better than the pricier Mercedes E-Class coupe. It's able to shade Audi's A5 in this respect, even if it isn't able to quite get on terms with BMW's rear-wheel drive 3 Series coupe. And if you're coming to this car from an older Mercedes two-door, say an old CLK or an old C-Class sports coupe, then you really won't believe the difference. Now, the reasons why are mainly all to do with suspension. News that this car was to have a lowered, stiffened setup made me fear for the kind of supple and absorbent ride that buyers will tend to expect from anything bearing the three-pointed star on its bonnet. But I needn't have worried. This car is still in its element on the motorway and soaks up poorly finished urban surfaces with ease. Yet, on the kind of twisting B-road in which you'd normally be more comfortable in a BMW, this car is also able to change its personality thanks to agility control suspension that incorporates an adaptive damping system, flattening body roll through the bends in a way that makes you feel comfortable about pushing on. That's presuming that you can get comfortable yourself with the slightly vague feel of the speed-sensitive power steering. The extent to which you can push on, of course, depends on the engine you've chosen. Don't expect too many performance fireworks if your budget restricts you to the entry-level 1.8 litre four-cylinder petrol variants, the 156 brake horsepower C180 or the 204 brake horsepower C250. The four-cylinder diesels are better though. They're 2.15 litres in size and have prodigious torque. There's 400 newton meters of it in the 170 brake horsepower C220 CDI that I'm driving here, enough to make this car feel faster than the 8.4 second rest to 60 sprint time might suggest. And you can order this diesel in pokier C250 CDI form with 204 brake horsepower, where it's got 500 newton meters of pulling power, enough to lower the rest to 60 sprint time down to 7 seconds dead and increase the maximum speed from 144 to 149 miles an hour. Now, if that's not fast enough and you can't stretch to the C63 AMG 457 brake horsepower Super Coupe flagship, then it's well worth looking at the sole 6-cylinder petrol option, the C350, able to get rest to 60 in 6 seconds dead. Now, nearly all C-Class coupe models will be sold with the 7G-tronic plus 7-speed automatic transmission that I've got here, with its wheel-mounted paddle shifters. Only the C180 and the 4-cylinder diesels have the option of a 6-speed manual gearbox. Now, Mercedes is determined that we should see this car as a fully fledged sports coupe, rather than merely a two-door version of the C-Class saloon. Hence the AMG body kit, the 18-inch alloy wheels and the 15mm lower ride height that all UK customers must have. Now, these build on the aesthetic differences that this car already enjoys over its four-door and estate C-Class counterparts, the more steeply raked windscreen, the lower roof and the shorter rear. It has a more distinctive front end as well, with this more prominent front grille flanked by side-set air intakes that have daytime running lights set low down to give a more road-hugging appearance. All this intended sportiness is there for a reason, and it isn't only to get this car on terms with its BMW and Audi counterparts. Take a look at the stats, and it quickly becomes clear that there isn't really that much difference between this car and its more expensive Mercedes E-Class coupe stablemate. After all, both cars share the same underpinnings, they sit on the same wheelbase, they have a number of the same engines. Indeed, apart from the fact that an E-Class coupe is 55 kilograms heavier and 4 inches longer, there isn't really that much difference between the two cars at all, except for the fact that they're aimed at two very different audiences. The two-door E-Class coupe at older buyers, this model at younger ones. Hence, this design's more dynamic look and feel, trend that continues on inside. Now, you sit low down behind a sporty CLS-style 3-spoke chrome trim steering wheel and look ahead into 3 deeply cowled sports instrument dials, the largest central one of which has a neat 3-dimensional display at its centre. It's a beautifully conceived cabin, higher in class and smarter in feel than that of a BMW 3 Series Coupe or an Audi A5, thanks to combined use of high gloss, matte and chrome finishes that make the high asking prices seem easier to bear. Now, not quite as impressive in comparison with these two rivals is the amount of space that you get once installed in one of the 2 individually sculpted sports seats back here in the rear. Now, while you might just about get away with calling the equivalent BMW or Audi a 4-seater, this is better described as a 2+2, with space occasionally on shorter journeys that would be fine for 2 adults, decent enough for children, but it does feel a bit enclosed back here thanks to the narrow aperture of these rear windows. I've no complaints about the boot though, very useful in size at 450 litres, and further extendable if you use these neat catches to push forward the 60/40 split folding rear seats. Now, if you're considering this model, then you might be familiar with the old Mercedes C-Class Sports Coupe, which sold between 2001 and 2008. And that model was refreshing in that it was actually priced at less than you pay for an equivalent C-Class saloon. Now, there's none of that here. The pricing for this coupe is significantly above that which you'd pay for the equivalent four-door C-Class, but not by as much as you might think at first glance. Looking initially at the price list reveals a £5,000 difference between a C180 Sports Coupe and a C180 base spec C-Class saloon. But that's to ignore the AMG Sport trim that all Coupe C-Class models must have in the UK. And if you take that into account and compare this coupe with a sport trimmed C-Class saloon, then the difference is a far more palatable £1,600. Now that brings us to a C-Class coupe price span that for mainstream models is in the £30,000 to £35,000 bracket, unless you're considering the C63 AMG Super Coupe flagship model, in which case you'll need a budget getting up to around £60,000 once you've accounted for a few well-chosen extras. So how does all this leave this Mercedes when it comes to obvious rivals? Well, again, in comparison, you've got to take the AMG Sport trimming into account. If you do that and compare this C-Class coupe to, say, an M Sport trimmed BMW 3 Series coupe or an S-Line trimmed Audi A5, then you'll find that prices are near identical. But of course, the advantage that BMW and Audi can offer is the availability of equivalent engines in more affordable spec levels, if that's what you want. The C-Class Sports Coupe engine range should offer enough options to suit most choices. Now, the majority of buyers will be looking at a four-cylinder model like the one I have here. Now, in terms of petrol power, there's a choice of two 1.8 litre units in the C180 and C250 models, but I've opted here for the 2.15 litre C220 CDI diesel. The same 2.15 litre engine is available in more powerful form if you go for the C250 CDI diesel. Now, of more minority interest will be the two six-cylinder petrol options, the 306 brake horsepower C350 or the fearsome 457 brake horsepower C63 AMG. But whichever C-Class coupe model you opt for, you should find it decently equipped. Apart from the AMG Sports Body Kit that all models get, and that includes treatment for the front and rear aprons and the side skirts, buyers can also expect to find lowered sport suspension with agility control and adaptive damping. Plus you get these automatic bi-xenon headlamps that are able to dip themselves for you at night and incorporate LED daytime running lights. Other standard features include rain-sensing wipers, parking sensors, sports seats, stainless steel pedals. You get a climate control system, Bluetooth compatibility for your mobile phone, and a high-quality 8-speaker stereo system with a 6-disc in-dash CD auto-changer and DAB digital radio. Now, if you've opted, as I have here, for the 7G-tronic 7-speed automatic gearbox, you also get lovely paddle shifters behind the leather-trimmed 3-spoke sports steering wheel. One option that's sure to be popular is the double glass sunroof system, which gives a Targa feel to the cabin without any of the high-speed buffeting that you get from a true convertible. And buyers can also tick the box for the Command multimedia online system, which enables you to get onto the internet and to conduct destination searches via Google. Safety-wise, there are twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a knee bag for the driver and even a pelvis bag for the driver as well. And you get ISOFIX child seat fixings in the rear. You also can expect to find Mercedes' clever pre-safe function, which senses when an accident is inevitable and is able to prepare the car to reduce the severity of an accident. Now, to hopefully avoid you getting into that kind of situation in the first place, there are, of course, a full complement of the latest electronic braking, traction and stability functions. Oh, and a tyre pressure loss warning feature too. I also especially like the standard attention assist function, which is able to sense when you're not at your best and warn you to stop for a restorative coffee. Extra cross features include a system that will read and display on the dash speed limit signs as you pass them, and Mercedes Distronic Plus proximity control. But I'd especially recommend that you look at the active blind spot assist and lane keeping assist optional functions. Now, we're quite familiar with these kinds of things on plusher cars now. Systems that, in the case of blind spot assist, will stop you dangerously pulling out in front of another car on the highway, or in the case of lane keeping assist, will stop drowsy drivers from drifting across their lanes. But the active element when it comes to these two Mercedes options is really important, since it'll enable the car to intervene if after warnings the driver doesn't respond. All C-Class Coupe models, bar the top C63 AMG, get Mercedes Blue Efficiency Eco branding with standard stop-start, which cuts the engine when you don't need it, when, say, you're waiting in urban traffic or stopped at the lights. Now, news of this might lead potential buyers to expect class-leading running costs, which would have been delivered had not the UK importers decided that all British-bound examples of this car should have large AMG wheels and tyres. Without them, a base-spec version of the C220 CDI diesel that I'm driving here, such as you can buy in Europe, would deliver you 64.2 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and put out just 117 grams per kilometre of CO2, which would make it a very cost-effective company car. But with the AMG kit fitted, then those figures fall to 55.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 133 grams per kilometre of CO2, which is quite a difference, even though you do still get 625 miles on average between fill-ups. Now, to be fair, those figures, even with the AMG kit, are no worse than you get in a comparable Audi A5 coupe, but they do put this Mercedes slightly behind its arch rival and equivalent version of BMW's 3 Series coupe. Now, the exception to this rule will come in the unlikely event that you're considering the C350 6-cylinder petrol model, which delivers far better returns than its Audi A5 3.2 V6 or BMW 335i rivals. The 40.4 combined cycle fuel consumption figure means it'll give you up to 10 more miles from every gallon, and the 164 grams per kilometre CO2 showing will substantially reduce your tax deficit too. Of course, if you're the type of person likely to be considering the 457 brake horsepower C63 AMG range topper, then you won't be bothered. You won't be bothered about any of this. It delivers just 23.5 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and belches out 280 grams per kilometre. Of course, most petrol C-Class coupe customers will be considering the 4-cylinder C180 or C250 variants. Cars that deliver you from 38 to 40 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and put out anything between 162 and 169 grams per kilometre of CO2. What else might you need to know? Well, maintenance costs can be kept down thanks to the Assist Plus service indicator on the dash, which is able to calculate exactly when a garage visit might be needed. And as you'll probably expect, residual values are arguably the highest in the class. No luxury brand, come to think of it, no brand of any kind, offers a wider choice of coupe motoring than Mercedes-Benz. This C-Class coupe may be the marque's most affordable offering when it comes to this class of car, but it still feels of very high quality indeed. That, though, you would expect. What might come as more of a surprise is just how satisfying a driver's machine this can be, especially its more powerful forms, thanks to clever suspension and a range of high-tech engines. The top C63 AMG is a potential BMW M3 beta, and you can get much of its capability in the 6-cylinder C350 model too. Even more affordable variants, diesels like this one for instance, can be remarkably rewarding on the right road, even if the sporty AMG add-ons do slightly affect running costs. Now, you could argue that many potential Mercedes customers won't especially value this car's more dynamic repertoire, and you might be right. Important though, I think, for the Stuttgart brand to prove that it was capable of providing it. If that was the intention, then the job's been done well.